Hello everyone and welcome back to Elegant Blooms by Emma, and today we're going to be going over plant spacing depending on how much space you have. So we're going to be using grid paper, which you can print any type of grid paper out online, or you can just get some from the store or like a notebook or something, and we're going to be using that to determine how much seeds and plants you need to get in order to maximize the space that you have. So let's get into it.
I have a 60 by 40 square grid where each square equals 1 foot. And I'm going to start out by showing where all of my plastic or landscape cover is going to be at. So I'm going to make mine 60 foot, and then I'm also going to make it by 6 feet. So your landscape cover can come in many different sizes, and ours is going to be in the 6 foot by, we're probably going to get a 6 foot by 300 foot this year, and then cut it down to 60 lengths. And that is what I am drawing out right now. So you can draw out however long your bed or your landscape cover is going to be. So maybe you only have a 12 foot by 24 foot space. So maybe you do a 4 foot by 24 foot bed. So that is what you will draw on your paper. So now I'm taking my ruler and going to mark my walkways in between my rows. So I'm going to do a 2 foot walkway, which is about the average walkway in most gardens, and I would recommend doing 2 feet. And then from that 2 feet, I'm just doing another 6 foot marking to indicate the next landscape plastic bed that I'm going to have. If you're on the fence about what size plastic to lay, I would not go over 6 foot rows unless you are planning to put walkways in between those rows. So let's just say you want to get a 15 by 300 foot plastic to save money, because technically you could say that you're kind of buying the plastic in bulk. What you're going to want to make sure you do is leave 2 feet between 4 foot or 6 foot rows to be able to have walkways to be able to harvest and cut your cut flowers comfortably. Because if you make your rows too wide, then it's going to be hard to cut the middle flowers. So now I am finishing up the last 6 foot row plastic that I'm going to be having, and then the rest I'm going to make 4 feet. So the 6 feet rows are going to have all of my flowers in it minus all of my sunflowers. So these beds are going to have snapdragons, zinnias, cosmos, celosia, status, straw flowers, things like that in these beds. So now that I'm switching to 4 foot beds for tomatoes, peppers, and sunflowers, I'm counting out the rest of the feet that I have, and then I'm going to calculate by dividing that number by 4 to roughly see how many rows that I can put on here, and make sure I can have enough space for my walkways also. So now I'm just going in with the 2 foot walkway and then putting in the rest of my 4 foot rows. So after you have laid out all of your beds or rows how you would like them based on this amount of space that you have, then I'm going through with a blue pen and just marking where my walkways are, so I kind of have a better visual of where they would be, because it is a little hard to see on the grid paper. So now we're going to do the math part of this, which a lot of people I think it's overwhelming, but really it's not that hard. So we're going to just start with our first bed, which is 60 feet by 6 feet. So once you know the length and width of it, then you're going to do 6 times 12, which is just converting it into inches, which is 72 inches. And then you're also going to convert your other one, so 60 times 12, which is 720 inches. So once you have converted feet to inches, then we're able to start the math problem. So we're going to first do the bigger inches, and you're going to divide by your spacing. So my flowers, which is what's going to be in this row, is going to have a 9-inch spacing. You do not have to do a 9-inch spacing. That is just what has worked for me. You do what you think is best for your flowers. And you can do a lot of research on that, but I find 9-inch spacing is the best. And then what I did was divided by the 9, and I got 80. So there's going to be 80 holes going long way. And then I'm doing 72 divided by 9, which is 8. So there's going to be 8 holes going up and down. So I'm drawing in my 8 holes on this side. And then I'm going to write down 80 holes with arrows to both sides, so I just don't waste time by putting in 80 different dots. I'm just going to write it out to save time. And now more math. You're going to take 80 and multiply it by 8, and we get 640. So that is the amount of holes that is in this 60 by 6 row when you have a 9-inch spacing. So basically I can put 640 plants in this row. So now I'm going to just continue putting 640 on these next 2 rows because it is going to be the same spacing. So obviously they'll have the same amount of holes. So now I'm just going to do the math problem one more time, but with a smaller spacing. So I'm going to do 5-inch spacing, which I would only recommend doing a 5-inch spacing with your zinnias if you have a small amount of space. 5 inches is cutting it a little close, but it is possible if you do not have as much space. So I'm just showing you again what the math problems kind of look like. So if you had a 60 foot by 6 foot row and did a 5-inch spacing, you would get 2,016 holes to put plants in. So now I'm going to calculate the spacing for my 3 4 foot by 60 foot rows. One of these is going to have tomatoes in them, and one of them is going to have peppers and sunflowers, and then the rest space that I have is going to be for green beans. So technically I will probably only have 2 rows of 4 foot by 60 foot plastic down, and then the rest will direct sow for green beans. But just to make it easier, I went ahead and put down 3 different 4 foot rows. So the spacings that I have are sunflowers is 12-inch spacing, peppers is 18 to 24, and tomatoes is an 18 to 24-inch spacing as well. So we're going to do some math to figure out how many holes we can have in each thing for each spacing. So to start out with the tomatoes, we normally always do a 24-inch spacing. So I'm writing down first to start 4 feet by 6 feet, 60 feet, because that is the rows that I have. And then I am going to convert them to their inches. So then I can divide them by their 24-inch spacing. So our tomatoes, we always do a 24-inch spacing, so that is what I am going to be using, but 18-inch is perfectly fine. That's just, we've always found pretty good luck with 24-inch because they bush out a lot. But if you want to do the 18, there's no harm in that. So now to start, you do the 720 inches and you divide that by 24 inches and you get 30. So So we will have 30 holes going long ways. And now we're going to do 48 inches divided by 24 inches. So we have 2 holes going up and down in each row. So now to determine the total amount of holes in our tomato row, you do 30 times 2, which is 60. So we'll have a total of 60 holes to be able to plant 60 tomatoes in this whole row. So I'm going to write that out here. So now for this next row, to keep it simple, I am going to split it in half evenly. So 1/2 is spacing for peppers and 1/2 is spacing for sunflowers. So I found the center and I'm just splitting it down the middle. And then we're going to have to do the math problems to figure out the different amounts that can be in this row. Okay, we're going to start with the peppers, and we're going to start out by putting down the feet of the length of the row. So this one is a 4 foot by 30 foot because we have to the 60 foot. So then we are going to convert it into inches, and then we're going to divide them by our 18-inch spacing. The peppers, I do an 18-inch because they don't get as big as the tomatoes, so then you can get more peppers in your row since you're only doing an 18-inch spacing. So in a 4 foot by 30 foot row of peppers with an 18-inch spacing, you can put about 60 plants in that row. So that is definitely way too much holes that I'm going to need for my peppers because I am not doing 60 peppers plants. So I am probably going to put this row into 1/4 and 3/4 and have 3/4 sunflowers and the rest peppers. So I put down the 60 holes, and now we're going to finish up with the sunflower math. And you basically do the same thing that we've been doing, but for 12-inch spacing. So now after dividing 30 by 4, we get 120 holes for our sunflower row. So I'm going to write that in here. But again, I think I'm going to end up making 3/4 of this row sunflowers and 1/4 of it peppers because I'm going to use more sunflowers than I will peppers. And then the rest of the space that I did not calculate any holes out for is going to be for my green beans. So that's how I organize my garden and figure out all of the math equations that I need in order to get the correct amount of seeds in order to have enough for the space that I have.
So that is how I do all of my garden planning for different types of spacing. And I just find it a lot helpful to have it mapped out before planting season comes around, so I just feel a little more prepared. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and please subscribe and like this video and continue following me along this journey. Jesus loves you. Bye.